Hello and welcome back to Chess for All. Today we will be starting on our third part of the Tactics and Techniques series. We will be talking about and discussing how we could use blockades. Blockades are created usually when a side is down material and it needs to close down the position to get half a point out of the game. Usually, blockades happen when the position is so closed down that no pieces can go to the other side past the pawn blockade, usually consisting of more than 3 or 4 pawns and very few pieces on the board. Knights usually are never in blockades, as they could easily jump past pawns and go to the other side, which means the blockade doesn't occur in that case. The first position is the one I showed you last time. White is a whole rook down and is very close to getting the draw. But black can take on b5 and open up lines and win the simple game, as when too many lines are opened up, the rook can easily exploit it and take many pawns. But however, it is not to be. Pause the video now if you'd like to solve it if you haven't solved it already. The white bishop is in the way of b6, which could easily lock up the position and let no lines be opened up by pawns taking it. However, if the bishop needs to move, it sacrifices itself, which means that we would have even less material to draw the game. But there is something called stalemate, and this will become very useful later on. An unsuspecting bishop a7 is the way to move forward. This move attracts either the king or the rook to a7, but then pushes it back to its original square, as king takes a7, b6 check, and king b8, and then there's bishop to a7, rook takes a7, b6, and then rook a8. However, bishop c7 does not work, because when the king takes it and b6 is played, the king does not have to go back to b8, but can go to d7, meaning that the rook can go to g8, which is the only open file, which is the g file, one more faster than the original sequence of if bishop a7 was played, king takes a7, b6 check, king b8, king d2, bishop f5, king e1, king c8, king f1, king d7, king g1, rook g8 check, and finally king h1, which will be stalemate unless the rook gets out of the g file. The way to win for black was when the king was on f1 or on the other side of the board, from king f1, the e file, the d file, c file, b file, or a file, was to go on to g2, pick up the h pawn, and then if the f pawn if possible, and get an unstoppable h pawn to queen and win the game. However, when the king goes to h1, that completely stops the possibility of this happening, as it would be stalemate and a draw, something black wants to avoid at this point. The second problem is a tricky position where black is a pawn up, has a pawn on the 7th rank, but white can get up past a pawn and win. But how does he do so? Pause the video now. Black has been completely cut off because of a rampaging white blockade that stops the king from moving onto the a file. Crucial thing you will need to remember when solving this position is that black obviously can't take his own material. So how do you use black's material to block his own king? Showing the moves now would explain all. Firstly, white goes pawn f6, g takes f6, king g takes g2, king g5, a4, b takes a3, which is en passant. If you guys don't know it, you guys can check out some wonderful articles on chess.com which explains what en passant is and how it can be used. But continuing with the video, white plays bishop takes a3, pawn b takes a3, b takes a3, king f5, a4, king e5, pawn to d6, which cuts the king off from continuing to take the pawns. C takes d6, which picks up the pawn but doesn't let black go to the 6th rank and eventually go to the 8th rank or to the a file fast. Then pawn c6 and d takes c6, completely cutting off the black king from going backwards and making it go side, which would take a lot more longer, as if you've ever explored a right angle triangle, going on the hypotenuse would be a lot faster than going on the other two sides, and black is completely forced to go onto these two sides. And white continues, pawn to a5, king d5, pawn a6, king c5, pawn a7, king b6, and a8, queen. Black came in touching distance of taking that a7 pawn, the a pawn, but it just missed out. And also, if you guys were wondering why white had to take the pain of sacrificing all three pawns, if he just went a4 straight away, remember what I said, the pawns in seventh rank? Yes, black can utilize that because white is one move too slow after the en passant, and black can get the h pawn in and get his two pawns to g2 and h2, which should mean checkmate. And getting the king out of there would mean that the pawn with queen a lot faster than the white a pawn, meaning that the game is again lost. So finally, the key takeaways from this video. Firstly, always have hope, because something might be salvaged from a lost position. As the second position showed, a person could have easily resigned knowing he was a pawn down, and black could easily just go king to g3 and shut him down without a complete loss. However, use every single piece and pawn you have, and there's always a chance that you could get a draw or a win. Secondly, look for a way to close down the position or block opponent counterplay, because sometimes just taking a couple of squares out of the opposition could really lead them to slow down their attack, or even simply stop their attack, because the attack or the defense starts from that particular square, and just taking that one or two squares out stops the opposition from winning, as f6, d6, and c6, all the three moves in the second game showed, those moves just blocked black from going back, and it took away crucial squares from the black king going behind. And thirdly, don't ever exchange material on material down, but if you know that if you exchange material, you could win in the game because you could get out a crucial piece, do so. But always calculate what you're going to get out of this exchange. Never exchange without knowing if you can get a win, as it could just lead to a simpler win for the opposition in the endgame. While the second game was a brilliant showcase of 3-pawn sacrifices when you only had 5. If you try to demonstrate this to your opponent in an actual game, you could lose very badly, and you could also have had a drawn position if you didn't try to go funky and sacrifice all 3 pawns. And lastly, I will leave another position for you guys to solve at this end of this video, which will again be the topic of our next video, getting you pre-prepared and already starting to be thinking about what the next one could be. If you support me and my content, please take the time to subscribe and hit the like button, as it helps me create this amazing content. Also share this with anybody else who would love to get this wonderful game under their grasp. This is something that could lead to anything in life, and such an accurate representation of it. So, learning this wonderful game would really help anybody in this world. Thank you for listening, and see you in the next one. Cheers.